Did you know the average senior in the US wastes nearly 150 hours a year just searching for lost things? That's a whole month of life gone, not to travel, not to laugh with your grandkids, not to enjoy the freedom you've worked for, but to clutter. And here's the startling part. Those hours don't just drain time, they drain joy. Every minute you spend hunting for glasses, remotes, or keys is a minute stolen from the moments that actually matter. But here's something new and powerful. YouTube has just introduced the hype feature. When you hype this video, you're not just tapping a button, you're sending a signal straight to YouTube that says, "Show this to more seniors, because we matter." It's like raising your hand and declaring that your peace, your time, and your legacy deserve to be seen and valued. Think of it as clearing clutter in the digital world, removing noise so wisdom rises to the top. So right now, don't just watch passively, be part of the change. Hit like to show your support, subscribe so you don't miss the next piece of life-changing advice, and hype this video to make sure it reaches thousands of seniors just like you who are ready to trade clutter for clarity. This is how we reclaim our golden years together, one choice, one habit, and yes, even one click at a time. Caledon Mirek was 68 years old, a retired jazz saxophonist from the lively streets of New Orleans. His saxophone had carried him through smoky clubs, wedding halls, and long nights filled with rhythm and soul. But while his music had always flowed effortlessly, his home told another story, one of clutter, scattered memories, and too many things left untouched. Records leaned in dusty stacks, shoes crowded the doorway, old mail piled high on the kitchen counter. For years, Kaledan thought it was normal, even harmless. After all, wasn't clutter just a part of aging? You collect things, you keep them, you let them sit. But slowly, he realized the mess wasn't just around him, it was weighing on him. Every morning, he wasted precious minutes hunting for his reading glasses or shuffling through papers just to find his medicine. At night, he'd trip over boxes of old sheet music while heading to bed. The home he once called his sanctuary had turned into a maze. And that frustrated him more than he admitted. Kaledan wasn't a man afraid of hard work. He'd practiced his saxophone for hours every day for decades. But what he craved now wasn't more work, it was peace. And peace, he discovered, could be built in just 1 minute at a time. That revelation came when his grandson asked an innocent question, "Grandpa, why do you keep so much stuff if you don't use it?" Kaledan laughed it off, but later that night, it hit him hard. He wasn't just holding on to clutter, he was holding his family hostage to it too. If something happened to him, they'd inherit not just his instruments and memories, but the burden of sorting through every unnecessary pile. That thought shook him. So he made a decision. Instead of tackling everything at once, he started with 1-minute changes, tiny habits that were so small they didn't overwhelm him, yet powerful enough to create real transformation. And slowly, the man who once drowned in clutter began reclaiming his rhythm, one small step at a time. Habit 1. The Nightstand Reset. Kaledan remembered the morning clearly. It was supposed to be simple. He had an early rehearsal with some of his old jazz friends, a rare chance to relive the magic of their younger days. But instead of warming up his saxophone, he found himself turning the house upside down. His glasses had vanished. He checked the kitchen, the bathroom, even under the sofa cushions, growing more frustrated with every passing minute. By the time he found them, wedged between a book and the TV remote on his cluttered nightstand, he was already late. That small moment carried more weight than it should have, because it reminded him how often his days began in chaos rather than calm. That's when Kaledan discovered the power of what he now calls his nightstand reset. It takes only 60 seconds, but the difference feels like hours saved. Each night before bed, he deliberately places his glasses, his remote, his phone, and his medicine exactly where they belong. No piles, no guessing, no scrambling in the dark. Just order, waiting for him when the sun comes up. It's such a simple act, but for him, it became a symbol of respect for his future self. Instead of waking up to stress, he wakes up with everything within reach, ready to face the day with clarity. This tiny habit also carries a deeper lesson. For seniors, mornings set the tone for the entire day. When the first moments are calm, the hours that follow flow with ease. But when mornings start with confusion, searching for glasses, fumbling for pills, or tripping over clutter, the day begins with unnecessary tension. Kaledan realized that his nightstand wasn't just a small corner of furniture, it was the launchpad for his mornings, and by resetting it each night, he was setting himself up for peace, not panic. Now, instead of rushing or arriving late, Kaledan's mornings are smooth, like the opening notes of a well-rehearsed tune. And all it took was one mindful minute, repeated daily, to turn frantic beginnings into steady, confident starts. Habit 2: 1 cup rule. Kaledan loved his late-night jam sessions. Even after retirement, music flowed through his veins, and he'd spend hours replaying old records, scribbling notes, or practicing on his saxophone. But when the music stopped, his kitchen often told another story. Mugs stacked by the sink, half-filled glasses left on the counter, and cups forgotten in odd corners of the house. It was a quiet but constant mess, and every time he walked into the kitchen, it drained him. He realized it wasn't the big piles of clutter that wore him down, it was the small, everyday build-up that created noise in his life. That's when Kaledan decided to try something so simple it felt almost silly. He picked his favorite mug, a sturdy one with a small chip on the handle that carried years of memories, and declared it his one and only. From that day forward, he rinsed and reused that single cup, no matter what he was drinking. Morning coffee, afternoon tea, or late-night water, it was always the same cup. The change was immediate. His sink no longer looked like a dish graveyard, and the kitchen, once cluttered, now felt open and calm. That one small choice created a ripple effect. Because the sink wasn't full, he was less tempted to let other dishes pile up. Because the counter was clear, cooking meals felt easier. And because his kitchen felt lighter, he found himself enjoying it again, even inviting his children and grandkids to sit at the table without worrying about embarrassment. The beauty of the 1 cup rule is its simplicity. It's not about denying yourself, it's about freeing yourself from invisible weight. For seniors, every step, every bend, every chore carries more effort than it once did. Reducing small tasks makes life smoother. By choosing 1 cup, Kaledan gave himself back time, energy, and mental clarity. Now, when he enters his kitchen, he sees space for what matters: conversation, laughter, and the joy of music filling the air, without the distraction of dirty mugs piled high. Habit 3: Memory box check. One quiet afternoon, Kaledan opened a box that had sat untouched in the corner of his bedroom for years. Inside were his late wife's scarves, each one soft, colorful, and heavy with memories. As he lifted the first scarf, a wave of warmth washed over him. It carried the smell of old perfume and the comfort of her presence. But as he unfolded another, he felt a sharp pang of sorrow, a reminder of her absence more than her love. That moment opened his eyes. Not every memory brought him peace, and holding on to everything wasn't the same as holding on to her. This is how the memory box check was born. Each day, Kaledan gives himself 1 minute to choose a single item from that box. He holds it, reflects, and asks a simple question: does this lift me up, or weigh me down? If it lifts him, he keeps it with gratitude. If it pulls him into sadness, he thanks it for the role it played and lets it go, through donation, passing it on, or simply discarding it. 1 scarf at a time, he began reshaping his relationship with memory, keeping the joy while releasing the pain. The lesson is powerful for seniors. Our homes often become archives, filled with decades of keepsakes, letters, clothes, and trinkets. While some items carry comfort, others quietly hold us back, chaining us to grief or regret. By spending just a minute a day, you don't overwhelm yourself with massive decisions. Instead, you gently create space, both in your home and in your heart. For Kaledan, this habit transformed the way he saw memory. He realized that love doesn't live in boxes or piles of belongings, it lives in the stories, the laughter, and the lessons carried forward. Each item he chose to release made room for lighter living, without erasing the past. Now, when he opens that box, it no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a curated collection of joy, each piece carefully chosen to remind him of love, not loss. Habit 4: Inbox sweep. For Kaledan, the clutter wasn't always on his shelves or in showboxes. Sometimes, it sat quietly in his email inbox, piling up in ways that were just as exhausting. Every time he opened his laptop, he was met with hundreds of unread messages, discount offers he'd never use, newsletters he didn't remember signing up for, and scams disguised as urgent notices. Buried under all that noise were the messages that mattered: invitations from his old bandmates, notes from his children, and reminders about medical appointments. Missing those important voices wasn't just inconvenient, it was risky. That's when Kaledan began practicing the inbox sweep. Each day, he takes just 1 minute to clear away the digital mess. Sometimes that means unsubscribing from a mailing list he hasn't touched in years. Other times, it's deleting junk or blocking suspicious senders. In those 60 seconds, he turns his inbox from an overwhelming wall of noise into a place where meaningful connections stand out. The truth is, digital clutter weighs on the mind as heavily as physical clutter on a shelf. For many seniors, an inbox full of unread messages can create stress and confusion. It can even make you vulnerable to scams designed to prey on older adults. But with 1 mindful minute a day, the chaos shrinks. Imagine opening your inbox and seeing only the names you care about: your family, your friends, the people and things that enrich your life. That's what this habit creates. Kaledan says the difference is like music. Before, his inbox was a jumble of random noise, like instruments clashing without rhythm. Now, it feels like a clean melody, each note clear and intentional. The relief is immediate, and the peace of mind is priceless. Have you unsubscribed from anything lately? Comment yes if digital clutter gets you too. Your response doesn't just help you reflect, it also shows other seniors they're not alone in this struggle. Together, you can turn inboxes from chaos into harmony. Habit 5. Showbox swap. Kaledan's living room once looked more like a storage closet than a place of rest. Lining the shelves and stacked in corners were showboxes filled with records, sheet music, and odd keepsakes he had tucked away over decades. Some boxes held treasures, but many simply gathered dust. Whenever he looked at them, he felt a quiet heaviness, as though the clutter muted the joy of the music he once loved. He wanted to reclaim that space, but the thought of tackling it all at once felt overwhelming, like trying to play an entire symphony in a single breath. That's when he created the Showbox swap. Instead of attacking every box, he chose 1 showbox a week and gave himself just a single minute to make progress. He'd open it, look through the contents, and pull out 1 item that no longer served him. Sometimes it was an old record that never truly resonated. Other times, it was a tangle of papers he no longer needed. Each week, he set that 1 item aside for donation, recycling, or discarding. The rest of the box went back untouched, waiting for the next time. At first, it didn't seem like much. 1 record gone, 1 old note tossed. But after a few weeks, the shelves started to look lighter. Slowly, the clutter shrank, and what remained were the items that carried meaning, not noise. His collection began to reflect his life's true soundtrack: the records that inspired him, the sheet music that still sparked joy, and the memories he genuinely wanted to keep alive. The lesson is simple but powerful. For seniors, decluttering doesn't have to mean exhausting all-day cleanups or painful decisions about entire collections. It can happen 1 small step at a time. The Showbox swap breaks the process into moments so manageable that you hardly notice the effort, yet over time, the results are dramatic. Now, when Kaledan looks at his shelves, he doesn't feel weighed down. He feels surrounded by the music that matters most, in a home that sings with clarity instead of clutter. Habit 6. Gratitude walk. Kaledan discovered that clutter wasn't only about space, it was about emotions. Every object in his home carried a story, and those stories shaped how he felt when he walked through his rooms. Some items lifted him, reminding him of good times, while others pressed heavy on his spirit, carrying guilt, regret, or memories that no longer served him. That realization led to what he now calls his gratitude walk. Each day, as he moved through his home, he would stop for just 1 minute, pick up a single item, and hold it with intention. Instead of asking, "Should I keep this?" his first question became, "What gratitude do I feel for this?" Sometimes it was his old saxophone stand, a piece of equipment that had supported him through countless gigs. Other times it was a faded photo frame, reminding him of the laughter of family gatherings. He would whisper a simple thank you, a recognition of the role the item had played in his life. And then came the decision. If the gratitude was still active, if the item still brought warmth or usefulness, it stayed. But if the gratitude was only for a role the item had once played, he let it go. He understood that he didn't need to keep the object to keep the memory or the love attached to it. By honoring the item first, the release felt peaceful instead of painful. This habit transformed decluttering into something less about loss and more about thankfulness. It shifted his focus from "what do I have to give up?" to "what am I thankful I had?" For seniors especially, this approach matters deeply. After 60, letting go of possessions often feels tied to letting go of parts of life. But gratitude reframes the act. It celebrates the past while clearing room for the present. Over time, Kaledan noticed the change in himself. His home grew lighter, yes, but so did his heart. The gratitude walk gave him a daily rhythm of reflection, turning ordinary decluttering into a practice of peace, presence, and appreciation. Habit 7. Doorway check. For years, Kaledan's front door was a source of quiet frustration. Each time he left the house, he found himself navigating around shoes scattered across the floor, bags leaning against the wall, and stacks of unopened mail on a nearby table. It wasn't that he was careless, these things simply gathered over time, piling up in the very spot meant to welcome him in and send him out. What should have been a space of transition felt more like a tripping hazard and a reminder of disorganization. The moment of change came one evening when he nearly stumbled carrying his saxophone out to meet friends. That near fall made him realize that clutter at the doorway wasn't just untidy, it was unsafe. From then on, he gave himself 1 minute every day to reset his entryway, a habit he calls the doorway check. Shoes are lined neatly or tucked into a small rack. Mail is either opened immediately or placed in a single folder to be handled later. Bags are hung on a hook instead of left sprawled across the floor. The effect was immediate. Suddenly, walking in and out of his home felt different. There was no longer a sense of being blocked or burdened. Instead, the doorway felt open, like the entrance to a stage where every step had intention. For Kaledan, who had spent a lifetime performing, that clear threshold became symbolic. It wasn't just about tidying up, it was about creating a daily reminder that he was stepping into a space of calm when he entered, and into the wider world with confidence when he left. For seniors, this habit carries an even greater weight. The doorway is often the busiest point in the home, and clutter there increases the risk of falls, lost items, and frustration. By dedicating 1 minute a day to clearing it, you not only reduce physical hazards but also create a mental shift. Each entry and exit feels smoother, safer, and more intentional. What once tripped him up now lifts him forward. The doorway check turned a messy threshold into a space of freedom, making every departure lighter and every return more welcoming. Habit 8. Future self-favor. Kaledan came to realize that clutter wasn't always about objects scattered on shelves or piles tucked into corners. Sometimes clutter showed up as chaos in the flow of his day. Mornings, especially, seemed to slip away from him. He'd wake up and spend far too long hunting for his keys, checking every jacket pocket for his wallet, or searching under cushions for his hearing aids. The frustration built before the day had even begun, leaving him feeling behind before he'd taken his first sip of coffee. One evening, as he sat down to watch television, he thought about how much easier life would be if tomorrow was already set up for success. So he gave himself a small challenge. Before touching the remote, he would take just 1 minute to do his future self favor. In that single minute, he gathered his essentials, keys placed in a dish by the door, wallet set neatly on the dresser, hearing aids resting safely in their case, and his shoes placed together where he could easily slip them on in the morning. The next day, instead of frustration, he experienced flow. Everything he needed was waiting for him, as if his past self had left him a small gift. This habit became a turning point. He realized that giving his future self a favor wasn't just about saving time, it was about reducing stress and beginning each day with confidence. For seniors, mornings can be the most fragile part of the day. Energy levels are often lower, and small inconveniences feel heavier than they once did. Preparing the night before transforms those fragile moments into steady beginnings. Over time, Kaledan noticed that this one-minute ritual had ripple effects. His mornings grew calmer, which made his afternoons more productive and his evenings more relaxed. By honoring his future self, he showed himself respect in the present. The clutter of stress and lost time was gone, replaced by smooth starts that felt as effortless as a saxophone's opening note. What once began in frustration now begins in harmony, all because of one thoughtful minute. Habit 9. Calendar Declutter. For Kaledan, clutter didn't only sit on shelves or pile up in drawers, it also lived on his calendar. After retirement, he thought his days would be slower, but in reality, they became overstuffed. Invitations from community groups, doctor's appointments, music meetups, church events, and family obligations filled every line of his planner. At first, he told himself it was good to stay busy, but after a while, the weight of too many commitments began to press on him. His days were so crowded that they no longer left room for rest, reflection, or spontaneity. It felt like trying to play a jazz piece where every measure was crammed with notes. There was no breathing room, no rhythm, only noise. That's when he discovered the practice of calendar declutter. Once a week, usually on Sunday evenings, he spends 1 minute scanning his schedule and asking one key question: does this commitment truly matter to me right now? If the answer is no, he cancels it or gracefully declines. Sometimes it's a meeting he agreed to out of habit, other times it's a recurring activity that no longer brings joy. By freeing just one slot, he creates space for what does matter: an afternoon with his grandson, an evening of quiet music, or simply the freedom to rest without guilt. The surprising part is how powerful that one cancellation can be. For seniors, energy is a precious resource. Every unnecessary obligation drains it, while every intentional choice restores it. By trimming his schedule 1 minute at a time, Kaledan found he wasn't giving up connection, he was making room for deeper, more meaningful ones. His life began to feel more like a smooth melody, with rests and pauses that gave beauty to the notes. This habit showed him that minimalism isn't only about clearing spaces at home, it's about clearing space in time. Today, his calendar no longer dictates his life. Instead, it reflects his priorities. And by removing the excess, he's created a rhythm that feels lighter, more balanced, and true to the life he actually wants to live. Habit 10. Legacy Scan. One afternoon, Kaledan stood in his music room surrounded by the instruments that had carried him through a lifetime of sound. His saxophones, each with its own history, leaned in their cases like silent companions. Some had seen crowded nightclubs and the thrill of applause, others had been gifts, treasured but rarely played. As he looked at them, he felt both pride and weight. What would happen to all these instruments when he was gone? Would they become treasures for his family, or simply burdens left for someone else to sort through? That question stayed with him, and it sparked a new practice he now calls the legacy scan. The idea is simple: take 1 minute to choose a single item in your home and decide its future today. For Kaledan, it meant picking up one saxophone and imagining it in his grandson's hands. That choice carried joy. It was a gift of memory, of heritage, of music passed down. Then he picked up another, one he rarely touched, and realized it was better off sold or donated, where it could inspire someone new rather than gather dust. In that 1 minute, he shifted an object from a question mark into a decision, turning potential burden into blessing. For seniors, this habit is about more than decluttering. It's about peace of mind. We often keep things with the silent thought, "My family will deal with it later." But in reality, those unmade decisions become heavy tasks for loved ones. The legacy scan transforms that weight into love. Each item chosen now, whether kept, given, or released, is a gift of clarity for tomorrow. Kaledan found that the practice made him feel lighter in spirit, too. His home no longer whispered with the question of what if and what next. Instead, it sang with intentional choices, each one reflecting the story he wanted to leave behind. With every legacy scan, he was shaping not just his space, but the memory of himself his family would carry forward, one of love, music, and freedom, not of clutter and confusion. When Kaledan first began his journey, his home felt heavy. Every room carried layers of the past, boxes stacked in corners, records tucked away but never played, clothes and keepsakes waiting for decisions that never came. Walking through his house felt less like living and more like navigating a museum of unfinished choices. But through his 1-minute habits, that weight began to lift. Slowly, the clutter gave way to clarity. The transformation wasn't about stripping his life bare, it was about choosing what truly mattered and letting go of what didn't. Today, his home is alive with presence. The saxophone he still plays sits proudly on its stand. His most beloved records are neatly displayed, ready to fill the room with music at a moment's notice. On the armchair rests his late wife's quilt, a symbol of warmth and continuity that brings comfort without crowding his space. The difference isn't measured in how much was thrown out but in how much lighter the home feels, how every corner now breathes. His children, who once worried about the burden of Dad's clutter, now visit with ease. They gather around the table, laugh, and listen to him play, not distracted by piles of things but surrounded by space that feels welcoming, open, and full of life. This transformation is proof that minimalism after 60 is not about loss, it's about better living. It's about making room for joy, for peace, and for connection. And here's where you play a role. YouTube has introduced the new hype feature, and when you hype this video, you're not just supporting it, you're telling YouTube to share it with more seniors who need this message. Every like, every subscribe, every hype is a way of saying, our golden years matter. So don't wait. Hit like, subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors, and most importantly, hype this video so more people over 60 can find freedom from clutter and the peace they deserve. Because aging should never feel like carrying extra weight, it should feel golden, open, and free.